Thing says I'm live, so I'm just adjusting a few things here because I had everything all nicely set up in order that I would be able to broadcast, but it's picked up the wrong feed. I couldn't go straight back to my phone on this bleeding thing, so I have to do a little bit of wizardry here and update the links. So if you just bear with me for a second here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and post in the chat on the other video that this is the correct link. So what a start we're on. I don't know why the zoom on that has gone quite so bonk. What on earth is happening with that? Woo! Never mind. Anyhow, just give me 2 seconds here. I'm going to go ahead and correct the... what happens if I touch that? Oh, that's what we want. That's more like it. Okay. Let's correct the the link for folks. Hopefully, though, you'll see straight away that this is much nicer than the camera I had going before. I've got an autofocus on this one and everything, so this should be much nicer than the last stream. Right. Now I've got to find, you see, this is the problem with operating across a phone and this laptop I've got next to me. It's all a little bit screw with. Okay. So I've got to cancel that one. How do I get to the link? Right. No, I want to join in that. I don't want to just... video link. There we go. Okay, video link. Hey! I'm now watching myself. That's a little... Oh, bloody hell, I've got to mute that. Goodness me. Alright, so... Oh! Check it out, I've got some folks in the chat. Hello! What a convenient time, says Kelton's. Just started painting my Thousand Suns. I haven't got any Thousand Suns, unfortunately. Friends of General Haig, ahoy! Sebastian S, Kitchen Wargamers, Mike, Graham, Iceman, hello everyone! Taylor Truxell, everyone smash that like button. Oh god, I have to be a proper YouTuber now, don't I? So I'm just going to grab this link now, and I will drop that in on the other video where people are patiently waiting. Alright, so tapping away here. I swear there's going to be some models at some point. Hang on, let me just drop that. There we go. Look, there are toy soldiers on this channel, I promise. Everything live right now. There we go. So Twitter knows. Click ding. And who is waiting patiently? See me in the other. No, I don't want to go there. I want to go upcoming. I want to join that. At least it looks better this time, Had to swap. All right, let me close that. And there we go, I think, and all. And welcome to an extraordinarily unprepared How I Paint Things. Yeah, thank you very much for bearing with me, folks. I didn't expect that would be quite so difficult. YouTube on your phone doesn't seem to like you going back to a stream that you had prepared ahead of time. So, yeah, what I thought could just be jump in and click go turned instead to having to basically recreate everything. So, it's a little bit messy at the moment. But we'll not worry too much about that. David Moffat says the cake was a lie. Yes, unfortunately, the cake, become cake or whatever it was in the other thumbnail, will turn out to have been a lie. Oh dear. Oh well. Taurus, is this the IT helpline channel? Geez, I wish. If this was the helpline, somebody might know what was actually happening. I would have a better idea of what I was doing. Andreas has joined. Yeah, joined us from the other thing. Hello. And I'm just going to grab one of the things we're going to start with today. Now, in the latest video that I put up, which was the speed painting white scars, I mentioned, oh geez, that's bright. I did mention that you would get a better result if you had left the, I'm just going to tweak the lighting here for a sec, but if you'd left the varnish to dry for longer than I had, you would probably get a superior result to what I had on that video. So what I've done, here's one we've prepared earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and shade him. Then we'll just put him aside for a bit, and we'll see whether or not we do get a better result that way. I was a little miffed at having to correct the white, I'll be honest. So yeah, I figured I'll take the opportunity to sort of set the record straight there. Let's just put him aside. I think I have some gumph on my camera lens. Where is my... Oh. So I've got my lovely kitchen towel here with the hedgehogs and everything so that I can clean as we go. So, that's better. Yeah. Okay. So, Andreas asks, did I miss anything? No, not at the moment. Mousebait asks, hello, Sonic, can you tell me how to paint whatever's in your latest video? Yes, we're going to do that here. So, let's have a look. I'm going to put him aside for a second. Actually, let's show him off while I've got a chance. I just wanted to have, this is one of the 135 scale Tamiya US infantry. And I wanted to do something larger scale for quite a while. You folks who've been into 40k for a while probably remember Inquisitor and, so-called Inquisitor scale stuff. And I thought it would be neat to do something, historically themed in that sort of scale. I'm still not totally convinced that my style really translates perfectly to this larger scale. But it was a lot of fun, and I've sort of sat on that for a while. I don't know that I'd really call them complete just yet, but one way or the other, there's something cool to look at. A little peek behind the scenes that you guys won't see very often. But let's go ahead. I'm going to grab my marine juice, just fiddle with one of the cables I got here for a second. Mousebait says he looks amazing. Thank you. I really wish I could get the proper smoothness to his jacket. Let's see here. So I've got my wash brush. And this fella here is really just to clear my good name. I am sure that we can get a better result than I did in the bleeding video. So I just have to fight with all of the bloody connections I've got going on here. The trouble with streaming the way that I am is that I've got the phone right in front of me, I've got a laptop off to my side, I have 3 lights cooking me at the same time. It's pretty intense, this setup. So, there we go, that should finally have everything out of my way. Let's go ahead and grab our marine juice, and let's just apply this over the whole model with the nice dry shade. Now I can tell you already that's going on much smoother than the other one did, so I've got high hopes. Oh, that's way too much. But I have got high hopes this will turn out better than the one on the channel. Probably doesn't hurt much that these 30k guys are covered in so much detail. All of that extra texture to them is really going to help. But who doesn't like 30k white scars? Right. still trying to figure out exactly where I'm holding the picture in comparison to the where it is sitting at the moment. This on, and then I'm going to take another swing around, have a look at the chat, because unfortunately I can't see the chat while I'm painting. So there are a few deficiencies still in my streaming setup, but I'd never really planned. The idea was never originally to get into streaming this stuff because, as I always say, you know, I do edit fairly strenuously because I'm normally talking absolute nonsense. And then somebody pointed out, well, maybe people want to hear the nonsense, and I found that quite disconcerting. But here you all are, so you've proved that person right. So there you go. I'll make sure and tell her, and she'll laugh. Now that already looks worlds better than I thought it would. The letting that varnish dry properly really appears to have made the difference. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll just put him aside, and we'll come back to him later on in the show, I guess, and we'll see how he looks once he's properly dried. Let's just chuck that over there. Close my stuff so I don't end up with that all over my table. I can proudly say I've never spilled a pot of Nuln Oil or Agrax Earthshade, you know, the precious stuff. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the chat. Buffering so much. Yeah, what is happening there? Taurus asks, is it a Tamiya figure? The fella originally the US infantryman, yes, he was. Man, I don't know what is happening with that buffering. I am seeing a little jerkiness in my display, but that's disappointing. I would have liked for that to be a bit smoother, but we shall crack on what we've got. Alright, what I'm going to start with, I did also want to show you, those of you who tuned in last week would have seen me painting a couple of little sci-fi figures. And because the colour on those was not showing up properly, let's get a much closer look at the correct colours for those Ground Zero Games sci-fi troopers. As you can see, that purple's nice and rich. Doesn't look quite as black and grim as it did in the other broadcast. So just wanted to quickly show that off. I did want to show us all. I painted that one on the stream and then decided I wasn't really about that color scheme, so I'm going to stick with the sort of halo green for these guys. I just think it looks a bit cooler. David says, I found streaming over Wi-Fi can be hit or miss. Yeah, unfortunately, it's either stream over the Wi-Fi and be able to use my this camera, which is better than my webcam, or it's use the webcam and plug stuff in, and I'm still at the mercy of German internet, which, don't listen to them tell you about German efficiency, hey, that's not on. Right. I'll tell you what else is weird about Germany, is this insistence on carbonating all of their water, wenig Kohlensäure, meaning a little fizz. I do not know what it is, eh? I suspect it's because they don't want to pay for something they think hasn't been treated in some way. Why would you buy bottled water if someone hasn't done anything to it? You know, so Germany, I get it, but man, fizzy water, it's not right. Look at this, the cultural extravaganza that is how I paint things. Taylor Troxel says they don't like flat water. Yeah, I know what it is. I don't know what it is. If you are a visitor to Germany at some point and you go to a restaurant or something and someone says, you know, would you like a water? Ask for still. Otherwise you will get fizzy water. And as Andreas points out, it tastes like the devil's farts. Yeah, it does. Thomas Lundstrom, I cannot get my words around today, eh? Did you see Warhammer's stream? Yes, I did. There's some very cool bits in there. I'm not 100% sure about that Sister of Battle thing. It's like a tiny dreadnought, and yeah, that wasn't for me. But there are some very nice miniatures coming though. As well, for folks who tuned in last week, here is the finished example of the Colonial Militia, and I'm pretty pleased with how he turned out. The color test worked quite well, so I'm happy with that. Let's grab today's model. Where did I go? Where did I put? Ah, yes. Moisturizer. Now, I say it all the time. I know that some guys, they get a bit funny about moisturizing because that's what girls do. I'll tell you what, take care of your skin. You'll feel better if you're, not having to deal with cracked and bloody hands. Kill Team box seemed a bit one-sided. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. The appeal to me for Kill Team has always been being able to make your own stuff. So the big draw of the original Kill Team box for me was all that new scenery. But when it comes to the miniatures in there, it's kind of a bit whatever. I don't want to play Necrons. I don't want to play more Space Marines. So hopefully if there's a new book coming, I'll be able to get that separately. Okay. So, right, for today, I have misplaced... Oh my goodness, I cannot get on with today. Everything is just... Yeah. That's already so much better than the one that I did for the bloody video, so I'll put him off to one side so I don't forget about him. And here's what I wanted. Here we go. Coming up, I am going to do a build log / historical adventure sort of thing. Starting a bolt action army. Well, not specifically bolt action, just, using Warlord miniatures. And I'm going to follow the 2nd New Zealand Division into Italy. Now, reason being, there's not a lot of stuff that really covers the Italian campaign in fiction. I know Sniper Elite 4, for example, takes you off to Italy, but there's a whole mess of kits and campaign books and all that sort of stuff which follows Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge and blah, blah, blah. But it always fascinates me that there isn't more attention paid to Italy because, you have one of the first major US airdrops, paratroopers, the 82nd, I think, or was it the 86th? Don't matter. Large-scale parachute infantry drops of the war, for the Americans. You have out there the Polish Free Forces. You have some of the Free French. You've got the New Zealanders, of course. So that's where I'm coming in from. And it interests me that there's not more attention paid to it. I think there's a lot there for folks wanting to do something outside of Normandy. Yeah, I'm looking at the same thing at the moment, and someone else, Narcissus is saying 144p. I do not know what that is, guys. I'm absolutely at a loss for what is bloody going on with this stream, eh? This is quite irritating, to be honest. Jeez, oh. There we go. I think we've settled. Have we settled down again? Is that looking smoother? Tell you what, I'm getting a lot of lag here too, but that's looking... Okay, that's looking a bit smoother. All right. I'm going to just crack on and we'll, it might go a little fuzzy in some spots. We'll just have to grin and bear it when it does. But as I was saying, the Italian campaign holds a lot of interest to me. And, oh, there we go. My phone is cacking out. That's what the problem is. This is one that doesn't get a lot of love from gamers. So I've got here, this is one of the plastic Warlord British infantry. A little bird is quite excitedly telling me that there's new commando kits coming soon. So I'd expect that would also mean then that we've got new British infantry on the horizon. I really hope so. These old plastics are dated, to put it politely, and some new kits would be nice. But for the purposes of just mucking around and selecting some colours, this will do just fine. So I've sprayed him with English uniform from Vallejo. They do that as a, what do you call it, a primer can now, so that's a bonus. And yeah, giving him a quick blast over that with the brush beforehand. What I want to experiment today with is British battle dress. This is one of the rapid deployment paints, and I mentioned this last week, but I am interested to see how this will work as a highlight color on what we've got here. So let's just quickly, what am I looking for? I want to paint the skin first. So I'm going to paint 28th Māori Battalion, because if there's anything that says to me what was cool and unique about the New Zealanders, it's 28th Battalion. In addition of books, which the New Zealand is available online, which you can just view, including a complete history of the 28th Battalion. Really looking forward to ploughing into that. I read the chapters on formation and their trip out to England this morning. Some really funny stuff in there, to be honest. Iceman says, my great-grandfather served in Italy as a driver in the logistics from Dunkirk to North Germany. That is a long way to go. I'm just mucking around here again with the screen. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I am starting off, after having Beige his uniform, I'm going to start by painting in his skin. And for this, I've got Saddle Brown. Despite the name, this is actually a really great base color for dark skin that isn't super dark. And I know that's pain in the neck as far as the description goes. But if you're doing, fellas that aren't, and I say this, I'm just not really sure quite how to put it, but, black skin isn't black. So don't go into all of these really dark browns automatically. Saddle brown has got a bit of warmth to it. And this is what we're going to use very quickly to base coat the 28th Battalion skin. Now I'm showing you the underside of the cork there. That's a wonderful view. Something in here is humming. Maybe that's what it is. The beautiful thing with Saddle Brown is that it will cover almost anything in one coat. So even if you're working from black, you won't have to worry too much about coming back and going over this and over this. Tell you what, that's getting up my nose. They can go off to the side. Oh, geez, I tell you what, I'm looking over at that stream and that's just not looking good. Which is bothering me because it was working fine last week. And it's one of those situations where, well, if nothing has changed, what's gone wrong? But oh well, we will crack on. So yeah, once we've got his skin base coated, we'll go ahead and we'll start on his webbing and his kit. Yeah, that's really bothering me now. When it comes to, where are we looking for? When it comes to webbing colours, late war for the British troops, if we're talking about actual English and Canadian and what have you, late war they would have had sort of a pale green webbing. Whereas the Kiwis, we never swapped to the new stuff. We just kept our Blanco with a sort of pale beigey colour. Taurus asks, will you be using Beige? I'm going to be using these guys for a number of different things, actually. I'll be building them along the lines of bolt action, but they'll be used for playing games of 5-core. So, what is that one called? 5-Minute Kursk, which comes from Nordic Weasel Games. I'm probably also going to use them for Chain of Command, which is from Two Fat Lardies. This is Eldar Flesh just going on now. And this is not going to be the final color that our webbing is going to be. But again, we're looking for nice, simple coverage. And Eldar Flesh does that just perfectly. Yeah, this is the trouble with having to look over my shoulder, so to speak, and check the chat manually. I cannot see what I'm doing. Now, the other thing with these miniatures, is they've got this strap running diagonally across the chest, which leads to what is this here. This is the respirator kit. Now, from what I can find, the New Zealanders didn't tend to carry their respirator kits because, well, why? Extra gear, extra weight, if you didn't have to worry about it. Now, they would have been a green color because instead of being blancoed, scrubbed in color, they were produced in a green shade. But there's that question of, well, if these guys weren't wearing them, do I want to paint them green at all? And I think what I'm going to do is do it the wrong way, and I'm just going to paint them in to match the rest of their kit. Is your missus watching in the next room, Troy? I don't think so. It would be unlike her. I know she's not much into the historical stuff. She's very keen on her sisters and her salamanders. So if I was painting Space Marines, she might be a bit more interested, but this is not so much her bag. So yeah, looking to do something, a kind of travelogue, and a look at the formation and following the 28th Battalion into Egypt, across then into Greece, back into North Africa, and wherever they served, we'll be able to follow along and maybe play some games or look at scenario inspiration, all that sort of thing. And all the while, I'm going to be building an army to go with that. Now, I'm hoping that I don't build this army and then 2 weeks later the announcement of new plastic miniatures comes along, because that would drive me a bit bonkers. Ipkiss says, love your channel. Awesome, got me back into miniatures. Really good and effective methods. Awesome, dude. Thank you, Ipkiss. Always really glad to hear when people are, getting back into the hobby and find these things useful. Taurus asked, do the New Zealand guys have armor in Italy? Actually, yes. The 4th New Zealand Armoured Brigade was formed shortly after the guys pulled out of North Africa. I think that had its roots shortly after Operation Supercharge in North Africa, which would be what would eventually break the back of the German resistance there. So that was pretty cool. We were issued, it was actually Sherman 5 or Sherman Vs, depending if you are following the British naming convention. M4A3s were pretty common. We also had M10 Wolverines. So I am definitely going to have some Kiwi armor in this army. I do want to do a couple of options. I have already painted a Firefly. Kiwis again, we were issued with the VC, so the old 17-pounder was in evidence wherever we went. Yeah, I think I'm going to paint this respirator bag in the beige. Michael Dawn, hey bud, Mark says, I'm doing an Italian bolt action army this year. Very cool. It's such a shame. Now, I know I'm going to sit here and grizzle. Because the rules for the Italians in bolt action are such a shame, because they're the only ones which have kind of that negative effect of, if the battle's going poorly, they pretty much give up on fighting. Which, I don't know, some of the national characteristics and what have you for bolt action armies are a little unusual, based on, stereotypes or just wargamer wisdom that we've since proved wasn't correct, let's say. So let's fill in the front of it there. Now I'm going to have to bring this up and away from the camera for a second, or right up in front of the camera, because I want to make sure that I'm getting the strap on his pack right. So give me 2 seconds here. And I have, yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah. These guys are a little dated, these plastics. The reason I'm sticking to the plastics rather than some of the excellent metal options out there is another little bit of wargamer wisdom, which has since passed into what is supposedly fact. And you'll hear quite often people saying that, oh, you can tell the Canadians on the battlefields because in the late war they kept their Thompsons. The British would switch to the Sten gun and the Canadians had their Thompsons, and that's how you tell them apart. Now, I'll tell you this, New Zealanders kept their bloody Thompsons into Italy too. And I've got a whole host of photos if anybody wants to argue with that. So, there we go. With our Eldar Flesh done, that's kind of stage one of the webbing. We are going to come back and do something over the top of this later, but that's going to be a highlight stage rather than to change up the color of it now. Didn't the Kiwis have composite armored fireflies with rounded corners on the front, sharp edges in the back? That would have been the called the IC, which was the M4A1 with the 17-pounder turret. That were fairly uncommon. I don't believe that the Kiwis actually ran those ones because we were issued, I am fairly certain it was just the M4A3s. Me on that one. I will have to double check my books, but I'm fairly certain we never ran the IC. Mark says, I love Warlord's metal sculpt. Yes. Firepower Gaming. Glad you're planning to do some CSC. I'm going down the I ain't been shot mum route. Yeah, I do want to do some small scale stuff. I have, lurking around here somewhere, some 6mm figures that I'm going to do. No, not 6mm, 10mm that I'm going to do I ain't been shot with. Good lord. I'll tell you what, guys. I need some of that horrible fizzy water. So, Was it Andreas who said, it tastes like the devil's farts? Yes, it does. What do we got? Do the New Zealanders ever get their hands on any APDS? I don't know the specifics of ammunition issue, I gotta admit. Torres says, I never got the point of using points in World War II games when there's so much information out there. I got to admit, I'm much the same in a lot of cases, particularly because at the moment, I'm playing a lot of games by myself. So the points don't matter. And we've just lost the video, so it's all well and good that I'm just talking at the moment. Okay, having done his webbing and his uniform and his skin, let's move on. Let's do his rifle. And for this, I've got beige brown. David Moore, who needs points play Squad Hammer Core? No! If you're going to play a Squad Hammer game, play Hammer of Democracy. And then you still stick 2 fingers up at points. The Hammer games and the 5-core games, I mention them all the time. They're real favorites of mine. Hammer of Democracy also works remarkably well in 9mm scale. So something to bear in mind if you ever want an excuse to pick up those cool Pendraken miniatures. Okay, I'm Mr. Whiskers asks, do you use special glasses or magnifying stuff when you paint? No. I tried once upon a time. I actually found it really difficult because I couldn't get the hang of where my hand was in relation to what my eyes were now seeing. So that was a hard one to try and get my head around. I've still got paint. You'll see here, I've still got some of that Eldar Flesh in my brush. People ask all the time, what do you use to clean your brushes? I use water, and I'm just gently massaging that gumph out of the brush so that it doesn't dry on the bristles. Ollie Oliver says, hello from everyone at Warlord. Hello, Ollie! Nice to have you along, mate. By coincidence, there's these nice Warlord miniatures I'm talking about. You guys can all now badger Ollie and tell him that you want new plastic British, same as I. No, be nice to one another. But yeah, really been looking forward to doing something like this. Because I saw, now a while ago, Pete the Wargamer did a series where he did Monty's Ironsides. And he went through the history of the 3rd Infantry Division for the British. Did some build logs and talked about how you can build your army, and I wanted to do something, I mean, in a similar sort of vein, of course, but with the typically Kiwi spin on things. Let's get under there, get under the rifle. Any game where you can play New Zealanders, I will eventually find it. It's funny, because Kiwis, we don't tend to think that we're super patriotic. Like, ordinarily, New Zealanders will say, no, patriotism, that's all for, Americans and British. Ooh, we don't do that. But if you go online and if you're playing a game, Overwatch or something, or any game that lets a New Zealander put a flag in their name or on their character, without fail, we'll be advertising where we're from, eh? We think we're not, but we are super bad for it. David Moffat points out, I found upgrading my lighting worked better than magnifiers. In retrospect, I hadn't actually thought of it that way, but that does match my experience so far. Ollie Oliver, my old regiment wore the New Zealand fern leaf. Cool. I'd be super interested to know where it was or who you were serving with, because that's cool. Any excuse to find out more about where that went. Now, while I'm doing this historical thing for the 28th Māori Battalion, I'm also going to touch on some of the other Kiwi units that would have been out and were very unique to New Zealand. So we're going to follow along the history of the Div Cav as well. If you've not heard of the Div Cav, the Divisional Cavalry, that will be quite interesting. There is a pub down somewhere in the south of England. I will have to go and find it. You guys might be able to find this yourselves. But there is a wooden wheel, a wagon wheel, out in the front of this pub. And it has 12 spokes. And one of those spokes is painted green to this day, representing the men of the Div Cav. So there you go. One of those little, those interesting little tidbits, those stories that you only find really going in deep on your research. So I've got camo olive green here. Let's just briefly dip back into the painting instead of waffling away. And I'm going to paint in his helmet with this. So real quick here, generally find over the top of, a brown or a grey, this will cover quite easily. It's just a quick look at the chat. Quivinius says, wow, after being subbed for ages, finally get the time for a stream. Yeah, this is something which I'm going to carry on plugging away at. you know, this is stream 2, so you can see there's not a it's not a glowing bastion of professionalism just yet. But I think that kind of reflects, you know, my attitude towards this that I'm doing. I don't need huge glowing production values. We're really just here to hang out, paint some toys, have some fun, you know. I think sometimes folks can be put off by what might seem like unattainable results because it's difficult to tell just how much of a video you're watching essentially live and how much of it is post-production. So hopefully, if you ever watch one of my things, and I'm very clearly buggering it up as we go, that is encouraging to you when you come to do your own stuff. You know, I am just throwing paint at the models. Firepower gaming, 28mm is too big for World War II. I like gaming in 28mm. Painting certainly, you know, these larger scales is more my thing. Oh, well, I remember paint. His bayonet sheath here should also have beige brown on it. So let's quickly... now, shout out to, of course, the Army Painter, which you'll see flashing all over this big black mat I've got. But importantly, this is the brushes that I'm using. If it comes up, you want to know what brushes I'm using. This is the Regiment brush. And it is pretty much what I use for almost all of my painting at this sort of scale. Taylor Troxtel, for some reason this stream doesn't have the donate button below. I really feel funny about asking people for money. Especially at the moment, you know, there are 1,001 things happening in the world where I think there are people and organizations and efforts that require more than I do. So as much as I'd love to be able to just put my hands up and say, hey, you know, go nuts, I really feel funny about asking for donations. So if you do want to, in one of the, in all of the How I Paint Things videos, there are links to my Ko-fi if you want to do a one-off, or my Patreon if you want to, you know, hang around each week, each month rather. But yeah, donations, I struggle with asking folks because it doesn't seem right to me when honestly other people just need it more. So before I forget, let's just do a little bit of Eldar Flesh across the... Ooh. I don't know why I can't talk and concentrate at the same time, you know? Yep. Oh, I've nuts that up. Never mind. Now, honestly, I don't think there's a huge amount left to do on the base coat front here. We will use flat earth to paint in his water bottle. Mark says Firelock Games Blood and Valor looks good. I've seen it mentioned. I haven't really gone and had a look myself yet, so that's one I'll have to investigate. But yes, I mentioned earlier the value of points or why use points in a World War II game. And this is why I've really enjoyed the opportunity to do a fair bit of solo gaming, because I'm then not pitting myself against... Come on, focus. There we go. I'm not pitting myself against an opponent who deserves a fair fight. You know, I'm really looking to overcome a different challenge, or even just tell part of a story. So for that reason, I can quite happily just throw points out the window. I have really enjoyed using the bolt action system for that, because the order dice mechanic means that I'm never guaranteed quite who's going to activate next. So when it comes to which side am I playing, you know, you really, I find it easier to then sort of disconnect and take the best choice for the unit that I'm activating at that time. Looking great, mate. Thank you, Andrew. Corvinius Sonic, have you tried 3D printing your minis? Yes. Yes, I've 3D printed some miniatures. Yes, I've... Oh, if it will focus. I've 3D printed... I 3D print a lot. I tell you what, finding really cool sci-fi and fantasy Patreons or Kickstarters or stuff like that is not too difficult, but finding really good historical figures in this sort of scale is really difficult. Friends of General Haig asks, will you be collecting an opponent for your Kiwis? Short answer, yes. I'm going to expand on the German army that I have. Pick up a couple of extra units that are a little more appropriate to the Italian campaign, and just add those on. Solo gaming is fine-tuning your strategies for when the world returns to a normalish state. The trouble is, I've then got to try and return to a normal state, and that's never going to happen. I've distracted myself. What am I doing? Black. I need black. Taurus points out, my question would be, why should it be fair? Doing better than what happened in real life if you're a beleaguered defender, for me, is just as satisfying as winning. And I got to agree, you know, sometimes the whole purpose of a battle plan is overcoming something difficult. You know, no commander in real life would have waited patiently for his opponent to be perfectly matched against him before striking. If you have an advantage, you know, you go for it. You attack from a position of strength. So points, I mean, I get it. You know, when we're playing against a live opponent, as a game, we both want a chance to, you know, to make a go of it and have an equal shot at winning. But for scenario-driven stuff, I don't mind playing wildly disparate forces. It also means you can ordinarily take a little more historically accurate stuff if you're not so worried about points. So, black boots. Black boots. And let's see if I can do... Still using the regiment brush. Yeah, we'll be fine. I'm looking forward to new sculpts for these guys, largely because these rifles, they're the only ones I've ever had any issues with snapping. And I know that sounds dreadful, but yeah, I would really like some swanky new plastics. You can hear it happening again. Here I am starting to concentrate on something, and I go really quiet. Good old thumbnail palette there, just to get the point back on my brush. Yeah, I hope you guys are not tuning in for like genuine suggestions and painting tips and what have you. This is really just a bit of hobby time, a chance to chat away with folks and talk a bit of nonsense. You know, keep myself sane by talking with somebody rather than an empty room, as it were. Is it worth to play solo for bolt action? Yeah, there are a lot of ways to make bolt action, chain of command, you know, almost anything can work solo. Some folks use like card activation so that when you activate a unit, it's got an order that it needs to follow, or some will use like the dice activation and bolt action is quite a good one for keeping you on your toes. Oh, too much black there. Whoops. It's really what you want to get out of the game, I think. If you're looking for, essentially, I mean, almost like a role-playing game. You know, the same reason why we'd start up the PC and load up, you know, Baldur's Gate or something. You aren't testing yourself against an opponent. You know, you're testing yourself then against a situation. So what you can do is to plonk down some more historically accurate forces and, you know, maybe look at real life examples and say, well, if these were the forces on the table, on the field at the time, how would I have done? It's really, yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to what you want to and what you expect to get out of solo gaming. If you're into playing, particularly with campaigns, that's a really good way to sort of maintain interest between battles, because then you're following, all right, well, here's the story of, C company, you know, my guys on the table here, here's how they're faring from one battle to the next, versus just putting unlinked miniatures on the table and blasting away at one another. And let's just fill this in black as well. Now, as I always point out, this is a lot easier when you don't have the camera in front of you. But that is really the base colors for our fella finished. What I'm going to do is give him just a couple of minutes to dry and let that black really settle. So we'll put him aside. Pardon me. Thomas Lundstrom asks, if you expand into Weird World War, what would New Zealanders have for equipment if you keep it thematic? That's a really interesting question. I would suggest ordinarily you're going to look at having stuff similar to the rest of the British, you know, in whatever game you're playing. So if you look at Conflict 47 as an easy example, then look at Lend-Lease gear. I would say, looking at it myself, I would suggest you Kiwis are more likely to have fancy or unusual gear that can be adapted to what they already have. So Tesla turrets for the Shermans, for example. But I don't really think there's a right answer, of course. Now, looking quickly at our White Scar from earlier. Oh, I missed a bit in the back of his bloody boot there. Never mind. But that is the shade over a properly dried varnish. And I think that works so much better. There's a couple of little areas where I might want to get in and tidy up the white, but for the most part, I think that looks pretty good. That's a finished marine. I just wanted to clear my good name with that one. The Dude. Hey, The Dude asks, have you ever painted offensive miniatures stuff? I haven't. Honestly, I've just never had a reason to pick up one or two of the models that they do. They're very nice, but most of the time I'm looking for something which either is a complete range by itself, normally with an opposing force, or something I know will fit the scale of stuff I've already got. So offensive miniatures, I know they're super nice, but I've just not pulled the trigger personally. Ridian, hey buddy, I'm just here to bother you. Well, I'm not bothered, haha. Does Bolt Action have any solo or co-op scenarios? Not specifically, to my knowledge, but you can normally adapt solo stuff from a lot of different, what's the word? A lot of different systems. You know, decision trees and stuff like that work for just about any game, and the same is true with scenarios. David asks, I missed it, did you use Ali's brown liquid on the White Scar? No, I used Mark's Marine Juice. It comes up in the White Scars video I just did, but if you're just tuning in, Marine Juice is 1 part non-oil, 1 part Reichland Flesh Shade, and then 1 part Lamian Medium. So if you want, you just get yourself a big old bottle, you know, put 1 pot of each in there and shake it up. They do recommend putting a little bit of water in here, but I have had funny results putting water in it, to be honest. So using it straight has given me better results. It's slightly warmer. It has a slightly more red tint to it than Agrax Earthshade does. So as you can see, it doesn't go quite as brown and dingy, which is really good for speed painting. I mean, look at that. That's just... do his base and chuck him on the table. Let's do his base. Still got to wait for this fella to finish drying. So just grab out some Sterling mud. Ollie points out, Solo for Bolt released an article on the Warlord website around March last year. Ooh. I'm going to have to check that out. I didn't realize that had actually been put out. So I'm definitely in the mood for that. Let's get some Sterling mud, a little scrapey doobler, and just slap that on. As you can see, not the most mentally taxing, which is just as well. Yeah, I tell you what, I have not been very well the last couple of days, so I'm pretty able to carry on talking, to be honest. I was laid up in bed until this morning, to be perfectly honest, and yeah, I was dreading that I was going to have to turn around and say, no, folks, no stream today, because, you know, as much as possible, as I sort of work out the kinks in this, I'd like to be able to carry on doing this, and you know, weekly seems like a pretty good target for it. And if we do manage to make that the case, then I think I can plan ahead a little better for what to show off and what to share and what have you. So I'm going to quickly duck away from the camera for a couple of seconds and just put him on top of the radiator. Taurus says it's dinner time. Ah, well, good luck to you. Hope it's good. Keith asks, have you tried mixing contrast paints at all? Yes, I have. Contrast actually mixes really well. It is a bit of a challenge because the incredibly strong pigments mean you want to mix in just a little bit at a time. But I have mixed up a whole pot of, what do you call it? Feldgrau, using Basilicanum Grey and I think it was Creed Camo off the top of my head. But yeah, they mix perfectly well. Do you wet both sides of your palette paper? Another question. Nope. This is actually, I ran out of the sheets for this palette pad. And this is just baking paper, greaseproof paper or whatever it is. You don't have to mix, sorry, you don't have to wet both sides. What is your take on different bolt action scales for vehicles? 148 versus 156. Oh, I tell you what, this is one of those arguments that always comes up in the bolt action Facebook group, and it just does my head in. Tanks are not as big as we would think. And when people look at how tall someone is standing next to an actual Sherman or Tiger or whatever, and then say, well, that's too small, it should be a 148 scale tank, that's then ignoring the fact that that fella's not got a massive sheet of plastic or whatever under his feet. 156 works fine for me, and to be honest, Tamiya's kits are very nice, but just a bit more fiddly than I can usually be bothered with. Rubicon using a weird glue with their plastic as well drives me up the wall, so I stick to Warlord. Or I just 3D print them. However, Warlord has started doing some really nice plastic kits in conjunction. I think it's with Italieri. And I'm really looking forward to when the M5 Stuart comes out. I think that's in February that one gets released. Richard Lamb, good evening. Discussing how we should base all tanks. I'm going to dodge that. I'm not going to start that controversy. So I've got Mangrax Earthshade, because why wouldn't I? And we're going to apply this all over our soldier. Making sure, of course, that it is getting into the recesses. And one of the tricky... Why is that bloody focusing? There we go. Making sure you get it up under his helmet. And anywhere on his shoulder, for example, where it pulls like this, you can use a wet brush still to just drag it away. Easy as. Let's just make sure that we are getting it into all these bits and bobs. And then, once I've sort of shaded this, we'll go into a kind of an intermission, because I've actually only got a couple of models here to paint. So while 2 of them are drying, that leaves me down on something to be showing you. But I have got plenty of stuff here which I can just flash in front of the camera and go, ooh, shiny. So yeah, let's finish this off. Doesn't take terribly long to do. I could probably have used a bigger brush, but hey ho. And I will violently fling that across the table. Tell you what, I don't know what it is, but recently I've really had trouble keeping things in my hands. It sounds probably a bit more sinister than it actually is, but yeah, getting a bit twitchy in my advanced age. Let's just make sure I'm not missing anything there. Yeah, and you see, just dragging it away for any flat areas. I don't want to go super dark. Helps if I do get all of his helmet, though. All right, now with that done, we'll put him aside. We'll just pop him near the radiator too, so that he dries off a little quicker. Ollie says, I'll send you the M5 early if you paint it on channel. Gee, mate. I would have no problem with that. Honestly, though, I don't know what army I'd do it for. Would it be for my Americans? Or my Kiwis? Oh, Kiwis didn't have the Stuart. I'd have to do it for the Americans. There you go. Right. Oh. PB says, I made it to a live stream. Woohoo! Woohoo! David Moffat says, dry hands get slippery. Chalk went up for some moisturizer. Yeah, man. Oh, geez, that sounds gross. Jedi Nut. Late, but I actually made it. Okay, start over. Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Nick Gams, is that a British World War I or World War II soldier? He is for World War II. If you are just joining, if you've jumped in a little later, I'm going to be doing the 28th Maori Battalion in the Italian campaign. So pretty late war stuff. They would end up almost squaring up against Tito's partisans in what would become the Yugoslavian army. They had designs on northern Italy, and as the armistice became, the end of the war, they were planning to just sort of roll in and seize a couple of cities. New Zealanders that were sitting there squaring up against them. So if you hear historians talking about Checkpoint Charlie as an example of when, it might have been the first time that American-made and Soviet-made tanks faced off against each other, as a matter of fact, it might very well have been instead 4th New Zealand Armoured Brigade up against the Yugoslavs. So a little bit of interesting history there for you. Are we talking M5 tank or M5 half track? It's American naming of the, my M1 knife, my M1, but oh god, it drives me bonkers. Richard Lamb, Stormgrad, hey dude. Robinson Wells, greetings from Utah, greetings from Dortmund, which is a sunny and wonderful place. Having finally cracked the skin tone, just while I'm talking about painting Maori Battalion, having finally got the skin tone that I want, I'm also going to be doing a mid-war force for them, because, the North African campaign is another one of those that just strangely gets left behind in a lot of gaming collections. So obviously he needs his base, but he'll look pretty good with a couple of dozen of his mates hanging out with him. So we'll put that aside. Now, while those other two things are drying, what did I show off earlier? Oh yes. Here is another one that I wanted to show. This color here. This is one of the 3D prints from the Terran conflict, or the Terror conflict. I can never quite... Terror referring to Earth. And it's a Kickstarter which has been going for a little while. I think it might almost be finished. But I printed this one off. This is one of the sample files. And I've been dying for a chance to put some color on it. Really nice. And I just wanted to show it off. I think it's cool. North African chap looks mint. Yes, he does. Paul Raworth, I think we need to do more on the Italian campaign. Yeah, that's the goal, and that's what I'm looking to do with this series. Well, not this series referring to the stream, but the series coming up. There are a lot of really great examples, little from the Italian campaign, and I'd like to be able to share some of what I've found over the years. In particular, I've actually emailed the Hamilton Museum, which was from my hometown, and I've asked if they would be willing to part with or let me use a couple of their recordings, because there are some interviews with veterans who came back to Hamilton after the war, and some of them are so funny. Because you've got these guys, they were 18 to 25 years old, leaving the farm for the first time in their lives and going all the way across the world and just clowning around like a bunch of maniacs. So it's a really interesting counterpoint to, the industrial scale of misery that mankind can inflict on one another, to here's the men of the 2nd New Zealand Division arguing about how to make coffee because Italian troops had coffee grinders in their kits. So he had these Kiwi boys trying to figure out, wait a second, do we boil the beans first? And shit, it was funny as. Do a podcast, I could listen to you talk on the New Zealanders. My other half, she keeps insisting that I should do a series, it's just a spoken series about historical stuff. I would... I'd love to, but I don't know that I've got the chops for it. It would take a whole lot of research. Anyhow, just having a little break, so. Oh, there we go. There we go. Back to the devil's fart water. Oh, that's so vile. Oh, look at that. There's already a handful of you saying, do it, do it. I suppose might have to, or at least put out an episode 0 sort of thing. Could be fun. We'll see. I'm just going to quickly grab that white scar and see if he is dry. Alright, his base is not dry yet. Is my Super Mario fella finished? He's dry enough to keep painting. Okay. Me here. Me here? Hi, me. I thought you learn something new every day. Me is not here. Me is here. Me in the chat. Hey, from Northern Ireland. I'm in the process of working on the base of 200... Oop. I'm just double checking to see if I have connection there. Oh no, we still look like we're live. Okay. I'm in the process of working on the bases of 200 American Civil War figures. Wow! I use tiling grout and a small syringe to put a blob on the base. Huh. And work it with a modeling tool. That's super interesting. I'm going to have to give that a shot. I'm guessing that's about the things. Yeah, maybe I really will have to. Oh, now I'm looking at the stream and it's all gone back to bonk. I don't know, maybe something is updating and I can't stop it, but oh well, we will soldier on. Now, what I've got, as you might remember, I used I used saddle brown for the base coat on this dude's skin. And then I've given it an Agrax Earthshade. What I'm going to use now, this is Eldar Flesh. This is from Privateer. It's a P3 paint. And this is a wonderful sort of mid-tone skin tone. And this is going to work as a highlight for our Māori fella here. So what I'm going to do is highlight him in much the same as I would any other figure. Just do backs of fingers, knuckles, all that sort of thing. Little across the nose. Oh, I cannot get the camera to focus on the right spot. But let's just, ooh, tickle in his chin. There we go. I'm going to quickly pull him up away from the camera, just so I can concentrate on what I'm doing for a second. I still really need to figure out how I'm supposed to get a decent view of what I'm doing, and also be able to see what I'm doing on the camera. I ought to take a look at what other folks are using for their streaming setup, because I think that would give me some ideas. Hopefully this one's a little easier to see than last week's, you know, if you happened to be here last week. Not very interesting at the moment with nothing on screen, but that is how we'll have to do it for the time being. I can get light in there. There's a flesh, real nice. It's actually the only privateer pressed paint I have, so I don't know whether or not it's actually just this one, but these are really good. Covers very well, and definitely gets a recommendation from me. Ryan asks, any chance of more 15mm stuff down the line? Yes, is the to that. Ollie says, all I'm hearing is that you need multiple M5 Stuarts to paint different ways. Well, Ollie, it's a good thing Warlord's going to set us up with those platoon boxes. So I've bought so many platoons of Shermans. A Stuart would make a nice place. Julian Warren asks, any suggestions how to cope with the painting skills aren't up to my self-expected standards? I can never paint good enough, and it puts me off painting even though I find it relaxing. This is, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put the model down for a second and we'll have a chat. Because this is a subject which really hits quite close home to me, and I think it really comes down to a little bit of style, you know. Deciding what you are happy with when it comes to your miniatures. We are surrounded all the time with excellently painted stuff, whether it's on the cover of a box or if it's somebody's work, you know, on YouTube or on Twitter or something like that. There is always someone who is doing something better than what we can do ourselves. Now, I understand that's not completely the point. That, you know, Julian's asking, you know, how is it to overcome your own standards? And that's one that I actually found quite difficult to do when I was getting started too. The short answer, mate, is to just paint. I know that that's not much of an answer, unfortunately, but I found the more that I was painting and experimenting, and I wasn't worried about my results. I tried to put that out of my head as much as I could, and I was focused instead on what is the brush doing? How is the paint moving? What is the result that I'm getting? And instead of worrying about the result, I was just enjoying, like I said, as you know, I find it relaxing. So I was enjoying painting. The results weren't important. And after a while, and I really mean only a couple of months, just focusing on technique, I started to be painting stuff that I was actually quite happy with. So it's difficult to put that out of your head. And I know that because, you know, you're always looking at your own stuff thinking, oh, you see the mistakes. You know, if I put up a picture of something that I've done, I will always see 101 mistakes. And I know the parts that I've missed. But you may have seen, there is a comic out there of, it's a little stick figure comic of somebody who's baked a cake. And their cake, it looks all right, you know, it's got a couple of layers and some icing. And they put it down next to somebody else's cake. And they say, oh no, you know, this person's is so much better than mine. Along comes another stick figure with a knife and fork and goes, holy shit, 2 cakes. That's the kind of energy to try and bring to your own work. You know, you're always a cake ahead, if that helps. So that's how I look at it. How do you overcome your own standards? Ignore them as much as possible. Just concentrate on the painting side of things, and the fact that you are enjoying it is such a good sign. Because so many people say, "Oh, I don't like it. How to force myself through it?" Man, that's hard, way hard. So don't do that. But yeah, that's a little more in depth. I'm probably rambling a bit there, but hopefully that. Everybody else in the channel there is chipping in. Yeah, some really good advice in there. Paint to your standard. Yeah, it's a hard one because you are fighting your own brain, and your own brain is really good at telling you what's what. And yeah, that can be a real bugger. Painted model looks 1,000 times better than an unpainted one. I don't know. That's not always the case. Don't let me near the great times. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really good advice in the chat. Folks just saying, give it a shot, you know. So with the color on his color on his uniform mostly finished, let's go ahead and we'll try that British battle dress again. Because I'm quite liking the colour that is for his uniform itself, but it's a little bit flat. So I think with some highlights, that should look quite nice. I don't really want to push the boat out terribly. Oh dear me, there's a lot of paint coming out there. I don't want to push the boat out very far with the highlights. And as much as possible, if I can find a colour which has been already mixed for me, brilliant. This British battle dress from the Army Painter, it's kind of reminiscent of English uniform with a little bit of Iraqi sand mixed in. So it is what I'd normally use for my highlight colours. Goodness me. And we're back. Okay. So just a little bit of water in my paint there. And my favourite spot to start testing a highlight colour is on the sleeve there. So yeah, that's going to look fine. So let's just pick a few spots to highlight. Now it's worth pointing out too, just while you folks are here, if you ever want to get in touch, there is of course the Twitter and Facebook. And I've also linked my email for the first time on the YouTube page itself, which is extremely imaginatively sonicsledgehammer@gmail.com. Now I tell you this because I'm probably going to take it off before too long, because the only people that have been actually using it to say hi or get in touch with business propositions are strange software companies making very peculiar games which all have little Russian names, and I'm not... I think they just find me in the gaming section and they assume I'm going to jump at the chance for a free bloody zombie survival game, and nah, man. So, you know, if you need to get in touch, you know, you've got something that you want to ask, or, you know, particularly, I'll tell you what, if you've got photos you want to show me, hey, I'd love to see what people are doing with their models. Go ahead, drop them in there. It's a little easier than sending them on Twitter normally. As you see, just quickly going around with this British battle dress, and this stuff is looking really nice. The camera makes it look a little darker than it actually is, but in person that's quite a nice highlight color. I'm just going to pick this up and take it away from the camera for a second while I do the edge of his collar. There we go. Now see, while it's not on camera, that's while all the really cool stuff is happening. So if you hear strange noises, lasers and what have you, you know that's because I'm not letting you guys see the cool stuff. Man, I got out way too much paint for that, eh? Alright, now let's just get him back in front of the camera. Now it's a little hard to see just because of the way that the light reflects off of the shade, but I think that's going to work perfectly well for a highlight, and his uniform's going to be fine on the table. Just another captain, love the video, but I have to go walk the dogs and pick up the kid from work. All the best, mate. Look after yourself. It's always nice to see your smiling face and your icon there. David Moffat, likewise, heading to work. Cheery, bye. Magnus Bengtson asks, do you do any scale models that's not Games Workshop or Army Painter? Ironically, I did start the video by showing off this Tamiya figure that I painted a while back. If I can get him in focus. Yeah, I do a whole bunch of stuff. Artisan designs, Warlord, you know, anything I can get my hands on which looks cool, I'll just paint it. Ollie says, working on Emperor's Children 30k, don't tell work. I don't know nothing, man. What's an Emperor? Graham Johnston, I use Instagram for posting my stuff. Don't find I get many comments. Would love to get feedback from anyone. Yeah, if you guys can, you know, feel free to drop links in here. I don't mind the chat talking about the stuff that you're doing. If you've got something cool you want to promote that you think people are going to like, and I don't mind, share it. Office. Hey, Office! Me here, think you're lucky getting emails even remotely related to gaming. All I get is spam offers from Wang developers. Well, I didn't say I don't get those, but... Alright, that's skin and jacket painted. Oh yeah, I need to finish off his webbing. Now I mentioned earlier that New Zealanders, we didn't change the colour that we were painting our webbing. You know, we had huge stocks of the original sort of beige Blanco, and the British Army changed their minds and said, it should be green now. And we sort of went, nah, we've already bought all of the beige stuff. So I've got here, this is German Camo Beige. This is a lovely mid-tone sort of khaki colour. Works really well for a faded kind of look. So just a little bit of water in there, and let's go ahead and highlight his webbing with this. If I can get that in the shot properly. So we'll just leave recesses. Yeah, not particularly exciting this stage, but you know, gotta be done. Looking forward to that Harlequin video. I am not bloody... Oh, Harlequins, man. They're so cool. Like, Harlequins from 40k are one of those things I've always wanted to paint. But even I look at them and just shake my head and go, nah. I look at the amount of work that would go into one, and I just can't be bothered. I just cannot bring myself to it. I'm not brave enough. So yeah, Julian was asking earlier about how do you overcome your own standards. Well, I'll tell you what, if I figure it out, I'll let you know, because I'm not touching those bloody Harlequins. They are some of the coolest models going, eh? And I think it's all got to do with the fact you can trace that lineage back to Jez Goodwin. There is a very nice man who, yeah, I think the workshop owes a great deal to his insane sense of design. Oh, I've got to be a little careful here. And I've splashed on way too much of that. Oh well. Yes, Jonathan Gardner, just starting to paint my two halves of Space Marine Indomitus in Iron Hands. Excellent choice. Hands are everything that's cool about Space Marines with robot. So I am biased because robots are cool. And so are Space Marines. So this stage is really not particularly very interesting, is it? This is the trouble with these World War II figures. If they're done right, they're bloody boring to look at. Unless you start getting into camo patterns and stuff like that, but there's a lot of baggage with some of those for some strange reasons, so I have not braved some of those patterns just yet, but we'll see what comes up in that in the near future with that. Let's quickly wing around his gaiters. I don't really think there's a huge amount left to do with this fella, to be honest. I'm really looking at color schemes just to quickly get models on the table. And as quick goes, I think that'll do the job. You fellas in the chat are now mentioning Gauls and Landsknecht and... oh my goodness me. No, don't do that to me. Scots, yeah, Landsknecht would be interesting, and I got to admit, it would be. I've had the opportunity to visit the German National Museum in Nuremberg and get to see up close some of the armor that was worn throughout periods like the 30 Years' War and so forth. Absolutely insane. Hey, like the craftsmanship that went into these things is just... it's really quite jarring when you think, this is a weapon, or this is a piece of armor. This is the artifice of warfare, and it is an absolutely gorgeous piece of art. It's really interesting to see. Magnus Benson asks, do you have a favorite brand of brush, and what sizes are needed in your opinion? If I have a favorite brand, I would probably say it comes up between the Army Painter or Citadel. The Army Painter's character and regiment brushes are pretty much synonymous with size 2 and size 1 brushes from most other manufacturers, and they are my go-to for pretty much everything. Citadel, I still have some brushes from when I first arrived in Germany, so they're about 5 years old. They're still going strong. Andreas asks, how much must we bribe you for to make you paint a few Landsknecht? God. I would need a bit, let's say, but I'd like to give it a shot, to be honest, at some point. Now, I'm going to do the edge of his helmet, and for this I'm going to use a little green-grey. And, of course, Vallejo being what it is, can I open this? There are two versions of this colour. I can't open my green-grey. Bloody hell. That's a problem. Have I got another pop somewhere? Uh-oh. There we go. There we go. Okay. A little bit of green-grey. As I always say, absolute clown shoes here. Do I want green-grey or do I want Feldgrau? Mysteries like this course through the universe. Let's just use green-grey. And we're only going to use a very, very light touch of this. If it focuses... Nope. Okay, never mind. Let's just ding along the edge of his... Oh, that's too bright. No. That's not what I wanted. After all that fuss to get it open. Taurus asks, are Games Workshop brushes still made by Winsor & Newton? I don't think so. I'm pretty certain they moved out for that one. Varg Pung asks, what do you prefer painting, Warhammer or historically correct stuff? Really a bit of mood. Sometimes I want to paint a Space Marine. sometimes I want to paint a soldier. There's not a straight answer to that question, unfortunately. More often than not, though, I do like human figures, so Imperial Guard in particular. The real heroes. Okay. Let's go ahead and I'm going to use field grey instead for the edge of this helmet. That's much nicer. Not quite so sharp there. There we go. Yeah, what do I prefer to paint? That's a trick question. You ask me one thing and the next week I'll tell you something different, you know? It's very much mood dependent. There we go. Okay. Taurus asks, would Russian uniform work on the helmet? Yeah, probably. It would be a little more green. It would probably look a bit newer by comparison. So, yeah, you'd probably get a pretty good result with that. Oh, bugger. I forgot the Taurus's helmet when I was painting his webbing. So let's get back to our German Camo Beige. German Camo, there we go. German Camo Beige. Yeah, just to brighten that up. Let's get a bit of Iron Warriors. Now this, you could use any dark metallic colour, any sort of gunmetal, but I like my sort of World War II era stuff to have dark gunmetal. And yeah, in that, Warriors is the business. Let's go ahead, get some of that out. And all I'm going to do is just a few little dots, really, just to break up the shape of the black. And yeah, almost just overbrushing some of it, leaving some black in the recesses. Wonderful dark. I love this. Don't forget too, the edge of his bayonet sheath back there. And that'll do. Yeah, to be honest, that'll do. Bayonets, they were quite a bright and shiny colour. So I'm going to use Iron Hand Steel for that. No particular reason that I've gone for the Citadel over, say, Army Painter or Vallejo in this case. It's just what I have to hand. But Iron Warriors does get a strong recommend from me for your gunmetal. There we go. Bloody great stick of metal. And that goes in the pointy bag. There we go. Points out, I recently, got overloaded on power armor. Now, let's just put that up again. Me here asks, I don't recall you painting a Perry figure. Do you not like them? I've actually painted quite a few of them in the channel before. They're Napoleon French, they're Desert Rats. I've done a few of them. They're just probably slightly older videos now. I'll tell you what. Aside, let him dry thoroughly, and then I'm going to varnish him to finish things off. History Nerd, thank you in your videos. It made me feel like I've advanced my painting. You have a calm and relaxing aura. Well, I hope so. I think sometimes we get a little caught up in the result. And, a large part of what we're doing itself is the painting side. So finding what you like about that stage is important. And I really think there's a lot of bonus in just slowing down sometimes and doing something for the fun of it. We don't always have to be working towards perfection. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. What was I looking for? I have a need for Gorthal Brown. Is that what I want? No, Riser Rust. Right, I want to show you guys this. Riser Rust. Right. This gubbins is extremely bright, and it looks like absolute gumph going on, but I'll just get a bit of this on my brush, and we're going to go straight over the top of that Sterland mud. You know what, we're not going to. We're going to take our dry brush before we do that. There we go, okay. Rather than just painting huge orange streaks on there. And yeah, this is cool for a sort of a rad waste sand and debris. And you'll see, like, this will look terrible at this stage, but as always, you got to for me here. I also really like using this particular base for post-apocalyptic stuff. So if you've seen back in the day, I suppose it's a little while ago now, I did some of the Anvil apocalyptic stuff. Wait, did I do that for the channel? I might not have done, actually. This is one of the reasons to follow the Twitter. You know, I share what I'm doing. But this works really well for the sort of blasted, gross, irradiated dirt. And I need more Rhizo Rust. Always need more of this. This is one of those colours that you think you're not going to get a lot of use out of. And then someone shows you something like this and you go, oh. And some areas are going to be a little more orange than others. If you're feeling brave, you can start, as you run out of paint on your brush, you can start flicking up a little bit onto the white armor. And I'm not going to go overboard with this, but just enough, sort of stipple on a little bit of dust so he ties in with his base a bit more. And it does require that you're a little brave. Let's make sure that I do get some in the back of his legs there. And let's not just make them orange. Right, let's rinse that. Rack says, hello, I love your channel. Hello, Rack. I love you. I don't know. I might not. But it's very nice of you to say. Taurus, I'm enjoying these live streams, so it does make me wonder how you manage to get any of these videos out. Honestly, the videos themselves normally take from primed miniature to a video being posted can take up to about 6 hours. And that is for 10 to 15 minutes of video. So the live streams, where I honestly just grab whatever the hell I have to hand and I start painting, this is a hell of a lot faster. So that is Rhizo Rust. Now give me a second and I need Eldar Flesh, which is hiding from me. Eldar Flesh, here we go. One of the funny things is I always forget that these are dry paints and I try and shake them up. Alright, so get a little bit of Eldar Flesh. And same procedure. Let's just lightly flick this along the top of the base. And you'll see straight away it changes from that awful garish orange to something that looks a little more sort of sun-blasted. It's a real cool color. I have actually, once upon a time, dry brushed skin with Eldar Flesh, and wouldn't you know it, but it worked. But for the most part, this is one of these colors that ends up relegated to basing material. So, oh, there might be a little bit much there. But that's why we cover things in tufts. Okay. Oh, I've got the wrong brush for this, tell you. Andreas asks, do you have a good recommendation for a non-metallic bronzy color? I'll tell you what, I have struggled. I'm not very good with non-metallic stuff. I have found, though, that like oranges and stuff can work quite well if they're highlighted with a really sharp yellow. But don't quote me on that. That would be one where I would ask someone with a bit more clue than me about how to get the best out of that. My Eldar Flesh is starting to gum up a little bit, so this is taking longer than it should do. But yeah, we're just changing up the colour of this. I want another brush. There you go, get rid of that one. Let's use my little cheap department store brushes. And I've got way too much paint on my brush. There we go, now we're cooking. Big brush is best brush. Whenever you can, and this will sound like I'm just joking, but whenever you can, use the biggest brush that you can keep control of to do something. Like if you're painting skin or armor or whatever it is, use the biggest brush that you can, because you'll find you need to come back to an area less often, and you will make fewer mistakes as a result. Takes a bit of practice, but use a bigger brush than you might think sometimes, and you'll be on to a winner. So there's how that white scar's coming along. Quite happy with that. Sergeant Mugbugs says, painted a Death Card 30k mini for a Christmas challenge last month. Found that I needed a magnifier for the rivets on them. Oh, don't paint rivets, man. Just dry brush them. Dry brushing will absolve you of many sins. I have a great deal of respect, though, for the people who have the gumption to get in there and actually highlight things like rivets and panel seams and stuff. You guys are doing far more than I've got it in me for. Tom Miller says, in one video you mentioned a good contrast paint to use on faces. That would probably have been Gilliman Flesh. Works really well over Army Painter Skeleton Bone, coincidentally. Okay. So that is our white scar. I'm going to quickly whip around the edge of his base. I'm going to use... Oh, that's the paint I dropped the other day. Damn. All right. German Camo Dark Brown I don't have. So I'm going to paint his base. We'll use flat brown. Yeah, the trouble with having occasionally you will lose a paint as it goes sailing behind your desk, and once it's gone, it's gone forever. Let's get that flat brown, a little bit of water, and we'll just quickly paint the ring on this base. Ah, didn't quite rinse that out properly before I get it in my mouth. Fantastic. I always find painting the rings on these things is a nice last step for a model. Sort of feels like you are coming back to the easy stuff, you know, just a quick coat of paint. Very relaxing. There we go. I'm probably going to give that another quick coat because it's not quite dry. It's not quite opaque. So I want to leave that to dry. And yeah, we'll give that another coat over the top. Right, let's just check in on our other fella. Here we go. Yeah, so he's all dried. I'm going to get now my Varnish Plus. This is one from Instar. These are wonderful. I really love the Instar paints. They're just never... I struggle because I've already painted so many like US infantry and stuff like that using Vallejo colors that if I use the Instar ones I want to use, they don't look right by comparison. So I'll have to start a whole new army. Oh no. let's... good noon from... Right. While the stream has apparently gone to planet Zarg, that's probably a good point to do some varnishing. So I'm just going to get a little of this on my brush, and I'm going to brush it generously over the whole miniature. This stuff is such a nice matte, and it doesn't have that weird grainy texture that the what is it, AK Interactive's Ultra Matte kind of looks like it's grainy when you finish putting it on. I know that's part of how a varnish works, but Instar's varnish manages the same level without going grainy, so it gets my vote. How are we looking now? Still kind of patchy. Well, I'll tell you what, by the time I get onto the third stream, I will have figured out what on earth is causing that weird distortion and lag effects and what have you, because that's getting up my nose, to put it one way. Okay. Tell you what though, I'm quite pleased with how he's turned out for a quick colour test. I think that's going to work fairly well for the army I have in mind. So if you have just joined in, you know, I'm planning to do a whole series, as it were, on the history, deployment, all that of the 28th Maori Battalion. We're going to follow them through to the Italian campaign. So there'll be some army building stuff in there, talking about different miniatures, and of course, painting toy soldiers. And for our colour test, there he is. I'll have to put him aside so that it dries properly. Okay. Lockhart says, most times I've brushed or varnished, it ends up streaky. I would really have to see what you're using, to be honest. I've not had it be a problem, except if there's a little bit of water in my brush when I'm applying the varnish. I find that can be a bit of a problem. Otherwise, I don't know what would cause that. Vallejo's spray matte varnish is quite a nice one, and hopefully before we finish off the stream I'm going to matte varnish this fella so that our speed paint marine, you know, is actually matte varnished rather than just letting the shade do all the heavy lifting. And yeah, there we go. All right. Remember, rinse your brushes regularly. Right. Now, rummaging around off to the side here. Now, if you are ever painting white marines, this is absolutely your friend when it comes to eye lenses and stuff like that. This is the business. Particularly when we're going to go ahead and put it over a varnished surface. That's going to look lovely. Okay. I think, yep, I'm going to grab my matte varnish. And this, unfortunately, is all going to happen off of camera. So you'll have to follow along by what you hear. If I scream, if there's a loud thud, you know, summon the authorities. Right, so Vallejo's matte varnish spray. My varnish of choice for most things. Now I should point out that I'm about to spray this near freezing temperatures, and I don't know how humid it is. It's late, it's dark, so if this doesn't come out right, then it's probably my fault. Oh yes, that's the good stuff. Uh-oh. Now, I don't know if you guys would have heard the uh-oh, but, oh, I put way too much on. This is the trouble with spraying out the window in the middle of the night, because it's quite dark here at the moment, funnily enough. But fingers crossed, that might dry okay, so, yeah. The Emperor protects this paint job, I hope. Oh no, that's going to go so bad. Oh well, lessons learned. Alright. Warm the can in a bucket. Andreas asks, any idea how long you'll run? I'm planning we'll probably finish up in a couple of minutes, to be honest. About 2 hours seems reasonable for me. Runs with Caesar says, get an airbrush. I've got one. It's lots of people don't have one, so I'm too lazy to crack it out, to be honest. But once our varnish is dried, there is our finished product, and he's looking pretty cool. So he is just English uniform with a shade, and then British battle dress for the highlights, and that's come out super well. I really like this colour. The fact that you can now order the rapid deployment paints individually is a super cool thing. So go check out the Warlord website, because you will find some cool stuff in there, I promise. British battle dress has probably just changed how I'm painting these guys forever, so that's cool. Philosopher I cannot get any words out today. I don't know what it is. Last week I was talking up a storm, couldn't stop. It was non-stop. This week I just cannot. I'm falling over syllables. Velociraptor. There we go. Every Sonic stream is a special stream. Well, there's been 2, and I hope for there to be more. And yeah, I'm enjoying that. So let's have a look. Has varnish dried properly yet? No, but almost. Dry, you sucker. Okay, there we go. That's now sitting directly on top of the radiator, because that's how classy folks dry their miniatures. Rosalie, love your channel, been a long time viewer. Thanks, bud. I'm always astounded that people stick around for these things, eh? It's really encouraging that folks just want to see some simple methods for painting, because I really think there's a lot of value in just enjoying what you're doing. So if these do help people to take that first step, or to try a new technique, or even just find some miniatures or a period they weren't sure about, then that's me dead pleased, eh? Jens, hallo and Grüße from Germany. Hey, servus. Douglas Price looks great, yet is also achievable. Yeah, that's the plan. Like I just said, I really hope that these are things that people will give a shot. Ridian points out it's almost like you're a charismatic fella who we like listening to. I suppose. And for those who sort of chimed in on the idea of me doing a read through of some historical stuff, I hesitate to call it a podcast, but if that would be interesting, then hey, I'll float that, see what people think. Graham Johnson, thanks for all the videos. Yeah, thank you very much as well, Graham. I think I'm going to call it in just a couple of minutes. I really do want for this white scar to be finished before we call it though. So I'm going to give this Blood Angels Red a real good shake. I know Duncan suggests not shaking them up as much as you might think and just using the stuff off the top. But if you have a pot of paint and you don't shake it properly and you use that much, it's just going to get thicker as you get to the bottom. So the bonus in shaking it is making sure it's consistent, right? Anyway. Far be it from me to argue with Lord and Saviour Duncan, but there's one point where I disagree politely with him. Although his Ultramarines do look better than mine, so there's that to contend with. Now with that varnish finished, yeah man, that's cool. That's a finished Marine, and that took no time at all. That's just flat colours and then magic marine shade. So if you do want to go back and watch the video on how I speed paint white scars, here's what they look like if you let the varnish dry properly. So, you know, sometimes I do make mistakes in finished product that gets uploaded, so shh. Alright, let's get a little bit of Blood Angels Red into the eye sockets here. Yeah, man. I'm just going to pull this away from the camera for a second, because I do want to get this right. And there's the moment I've said that, I've got it all over the place. Ah! So Duncan overcomplicates everything. I think it's a matter of style. Duncan's results are very swish, and I think if I had the sort of time that I would like to be able to paint things, I would probably paint a lot like Duncan does. But I don't have that time, so I don't paint like Duncan. And you need to tidy up white on a... I tend to find off-white. It's not much darker, but it will... Oh, come on and focus. Ah! It looks nice. There we go. So, let's see if we can finally... There we go. And there is our finished white scar. So tonight we've finished off one white scar. And again, if you were batch painting and doing these across, you know, a few evenings of hobby time, you'd be able to paint a quad and maybe 3 or 4 nights, you know, real quickly, very simple to do. And the color tester for 28th Māori Battalion, he's looking pretty cool. I might want to find a way to highlight his skin just a little more, but for block infantry, that's going to do the job. What kind of ball bearings do you use in your contrast pots? I use 2mm stainless steel ball bearings. And just order them on Amazon. Okay. So on that note, guys, just want to say thank you very much for all tuning in. I know there's been 1 or 2 technical hiccups along the way, and let's just get a closer look at these fellas. But, you know, there are our finished products for the evening. Real simple, and like everyone has pointed out already, achievable. You know? So if Warlord is still listening, lovely fresh British plastics, that would be lovely. And to all of you, again, thank you very much for tuning in. It's been really fun. I think I'm getting the hang of the streaming thing, and I promise next time we're gonna oh my goodness, this fuzziness on the... We'll figure it out, and yeah, that'll be good. Everybody's saying goodbye. Caesar's lick that like button. I strongly recommend against licking the like button. I don't know what it's likely to do to you. But yeah, you guys look after yourselves, stay healthy, stay sane as best you can, and like I said, I've dropped my email on the page somewhere, so if you've got any photos of your stuff you want to show me, I'd love it. So I'm going to struggle briefly with finding... Oh, I could focus the camera this whole damn time? No! Well, there you go. Look, there's something I learned for the next stream. Anyway, guys, I will catch you all later.